Hello friends, today I have some fun DIYs. First, we're gonna make this out of scrap wood, and I'm gonna show you, if you don't have scrap wood, how you can make it out of Dollar Tree supplies. I also have a couple more fun rustic heart DIYs. So let's get started. First, I'm gonna use this Dollar Tree heart sign as my guide, okay? Let's get started. I cut these pieces outside and it's cold out there, so I didn't record, but I'm gonna show you how I did it. So I laid my wood on top of this. This scrap wood was some old fencing, and I just laid it on top of I laid the heart on top of it. You see there how I did it, and traced it onto the wood, the part that I wanted. And then I laid the wood where I wanted it on the heart, how much of the heart I wanted this piece of wood to take up, and then I traced it off on that. And I took it out with my jigsaw and cut it out. And then I just kept doing that with different pieces of the wood and the grain going different ways until I got all of these pieces cut. They were all a little bit different colors of wood, and so it looks really nice. Then I took my little sanding block and just got all the little crusties off and made the edges a little bit smooth so I didn't get any splinters, and this is how it turned out. Now I'm going to just lay that aside because we are not going to need that right now. Then I took these little matchsticks that I got at Hobby Lobby, I believe. I've had them in my stash for a long time. You could use some little dowel sticks or those little skewers from Dollar Tree. And I'm just going to drill some holes in the sides of these because they are a little warped. And if I just try to glue them, they are not going to stick. So, excuse me, you're going to see here that I pounded that in there and I broke it off. Not a great idea. So I'm going to put glue in the bottom one. I was thinking just one of them would probably work, but I end up putting two in there. You will be able to see that in the end. So I just use the drill bit that fits the size of these little matchsticks, and I put the matchstick in the hole and a little glue in the hole as well. And then I'm going to mark with a pencil where that goes. You can mark the end of your little stick, or you can put some paint or some glue on the end of your stick and mark where your hole needs to go on the other side. I thought this was going to work, and then I decided I needed a hole at the top. So you can see there I did another stick, drilled another hole, and made two of them. Now this one I already had the glue on there, so I just put the stick down there, and where the stick made a little peak in that glue, I drilled another hole. Easy peasy. This is really not anything to be intimidated by. Then I did this on all of the pieces, the side pieces and the bottom piece. And this is just a great way to make sure that this is going to stay together. Kind of reminds me of, good furniture that has the tongue and groove. So it's going to make it a little bit more stable. Hot glue, you could use hot glue, but it just... it's kind of thick, and as it dries, it doesn't allow you to get the pieces really close together. So I prefer this method. Let me vacuum up my little crumbs there. And we're going to put this out. Now, all the pieces don't fit exactly perfectly together, and that's okay, because this is an amazing rustic piece. I absolutely love how this turns out and how easy it was. It really didn't take me very long to make this. Here, you see me, I'm just measuring where those go. I measured on the side and the top to drill my hole. And then, what am I doing here? Okay, I put a little piece of masking tape on the end of this wired jute that I got at Dollar Tree. And I'm going to just put that masking tape there and then cut in the middle of it, because that jute really comes away from the wire. It unravels from the wire. So I just wrapped that around that pencil a little bit, and just to give it a little, a little bit of character, a little bit of something up there. Then I'm just going to take some hot glue. I'm going to glue those pieces down. I'm going to leave that tape on there, and I'm going to glue those pieces down, the ends down, and then I'm going to use a little bit of that that's my drop cloth, canvas drop cloth. You could use some fabric. You could use just anything just to give it a little extra security. If you just want to use a whole bunch of hot glue, you can, but this will keep it from also damaging your wall. And then we're going to flip it back over, and I had some burlap, and I don't even know if this was burlap ribbon or just a strip of burlap I had, but I made it into a bow. I just did kind of the awareness ribbon squished down in the middle. You can make any kind of bow you want. If you wanted some color in this, you could absolutely make a beautiful bow however you wanted. This is just how I wanted mine. I have a little paper heart. I'm just going to trace around it on this wood and then cut it out with my jigsaw. Okay, now we're back inside the craft cottage where it's nice and warm, and I have this little music paper that I ordered off of Amazon, and I believe it's in my Amazon storefront in the description box below. And I'm going to take a paintbrush and some water, and I'm just going to paint over my lines where I traced that heart, and I'm just going to get it nice and saturated. And I'm going to let it sit for a little while. This paper is kind of thick. It is, you know, scrapbook paper thickness, and I'm just gonna rip it gently, and I don't care that it's perfect. I want it to look torn, so I'm gonna do that for this whole heart until I get it all torn out. And it tore pretty easy because I got it pretty saturated with water. And then I'm going to take some weathered wood by DIY on a makeup sponge, and I don't have ink pads, distressing ink pads. So this is the technique that I use. So I just get a little on there, dab a little off, and then just dab it around the edges. And I think it turned out just fine. Now I'm going to take some Mod Podge, and I'm going to paint it on the back of this piece of paper. I don't put it on my wood because I don't want to put it all over the piece of wood. Get it good and dry. Now I'm going to take some vintage linen by DIY and a nasty old chippy brush. This thing has seen its better day, but it works great. I don't really want to paint this. I just want to just lighten it up a little bit and make it look a little more aged. And this way, that paper's gonna pop a little bit better. And I took a smaller little worn out brush and went around the edges a little bit more. Just look how pretty that looks. Now, I did not use any parchment paper on this because I didn't care if the paper got a little bit damaged. It did not, but if it had, I wouldn't have minded it looking a little bit distressed and rustic. Okay, this is a little bit hilarious here, okay? So I'm going to make this messy bow. So I have a crafter that I watch. Her name is I think it's called a Rustic Stitch. Oh my goodness, I can't believe I can't remember her name. She is amazing, and she has this little thing called a bow dabra that she uses to make messy bows. And so I thought I can do this without one, and I did, but she does her twine like that. She loops it over, and then she puts all her little pieces of fabric, not quite like this, but she puts them in the bow dabra, and then she just pulls that loop up and twists it in there, and it just looks so easy and so nice. And so I did this, so that's where I kind of got that technique from. I would love to order one of those, and maybe I will someday. And so then I'm tying it off. But the hilarious part is, wait until you see how huge this bow is. Like, you can't even tell it's a heart when I put that bow on there. Okay, we're throwing that to the side. We're going to use it later. But I just decided to take a few little pieces of that and just make a tiny little bow that fits this heart. Now, I found these little wooden laser cutout keys at Dollar Tree. They are so cute. I love those little cutouts that come from Dollar Tree. Let me know if you found them at your Dollar Tree. And I just take a little bit of weathered wood or layered chocolate, I can't remember, just a dark brown, and a little bit of vintage linen, and then I take a little bit of gilding wax. I just want to make it look more like a key. Then I put a little bit of twine through the top of it. I'm just going to glue that twine over the top of that heart just so it looks like it's dangling down. Going to use my little silicone spatula so I don't burn my fingers on the hot glue. And then I'm just going to cut off the excess twine. And then I'm going to glue that little small, appropriately sized bow to the top of my heart. Then I'm going to make a hanger for the back. I'm not sure if I show that, but all of these little hearts get a hanger on the back of them. Hello, if you're new here, my name is Kendra. You're watching Late Night Creations. I'm so glad that you happened upon this channel. If you're a returning friend, thanks for your continued support. I hope you're enjoying this video. Now let's get back to crafting. Okay, I promised you we were going to make that first DIY with Dollar Tree supplies. So I have 2 of those hearts. We're going to need 2 of them for this project. And so I'm trying to see if they're about the same, which it doesn't really matter. This is definitely a rustic DIY. If you don't like rustic, you're on the wrong channel. So I'm going to make these a little more even than I did the drawing on the first one. So I'm just, you draw them however you want to. You do not have to draw them like I do. This is for inspiration only. This is just how I'm doing mine because this is what I liked. So I'm doing it very similar to the very first one I did, and I'm just measuring them, not even measuring them, I'm just cutting them. So we're going to leave those holes because we're going to use those holes. Now I'm going to use this little cutting mat. I'm going to use a metal ruler. I'm going to use a very sharp box cutter. I'm going to be very careful. I'm going to use a lot of pressure, and I'm going to push that box cutter down into that heart, that wood, and I'm going to score over it 5 or 6 times, and then you can kind of bend it a little bit, and then but you want not to break it because you want that to be a smooth and clean edge, as smooth and clean as you can get it. I did have one edge that didn't come out as very smooth and clean, and it worked out fine, but you really want it to be as smooth and clean as you can get it. So once I could bend it, then I could turn it over on the back and go ahead and score that, and it came off good. And then I just did that for the other 2 cuts as well. Now I'm going to take my little sanding block, and you can see that one is the one that didn't come out as good and clean, but it's fine. I'm just really trying to get the little splinters off. I'm not trying to smooth it out. I'm just getting all the little splinters off so I don't get splinters on my fingers when I'm staining and painting these. Okay, all done with that part. Now these are the paints that I think I'm going to use. I just got out some browns and using Dark Wax by DIY with that makeup brush. I have those in my Amazon storefront if you want to try those. I've got some weathered wood that I'm painting on with a sponge brush, and then I'm going to use a baby wipe to wipe it off. So this makes the most beautiful stain on wood. I absolutely love this technique. I will go back and use the DIY wax. I believe I used the clear wax to seal this, and it turns out fantastic. Then I use some faded burlap, and I do just 1 coat on here so you can still see the wood grain through just a little bit. I use, this brush is kind of between a brush and a chippy brush. It came from Dollar Tree several years ago. I don't know if they still have this one or not. And then I took that brush that I had done the dark wax with. It still had a little bit of wax in it, and I just went over it a little bit, so it just looked a little bit more like a stain. Then I put them all together and trying to decide what color I want that last one to be. So I took the dark and decrepit, what is that? It's a dark and decrepit, like a sealer. I think it's like a sealer. Anyway, it worked great. It was fantastic. Perfect color. So now that they're all done, we're going to glue them to our second heart that we saved. So I used the Tap Bond Quick and Thick that works great, just making sure that I got enough of that glue all the way out to the edges. I didn't even care about putting it in the center. I just made sure that I got it all the way out to the edges. And then I used the little clamps that you can get at Dollar Tree. I got to where every time I went, I was picking up a package of those. So I had ended up with quite a few packages of those. I finally quit buying them because I thought I finally got enough of them. But I have quite a few packages of those, and they come in so handy. So I just clamped those around, and then I had some of the larger ones from Dollar Tree that reached into that other part of that bottom larger piece. And this glue dries so fast that it didn't take any time for that glue to set up enough for me to take those pieces off. I just made sure that there was no glue oozing out the sides, and I took a wet wipe, baby wipe, and cleaned that up. Now on this little messy bow, this is that big huge one I made earlier. I'm going to glue it right there, and I did take two of those pieces of fabric and tied a knot in the middle so it looks a little more finished. I'm just going to take a double piece of twine, that's what that stuff is called, and just run it through and knot it. And then I'm taking that brush again that had that dark wax on it, put a little more dark wax on, and I just went around the edge of it and then on that bow a little bit, and this is done. Let me know if you think this looks as good as the one with scrap wood. I think it's awesome. Okay, remember those three little hearts we cut out on the porch? Here's another one. You could also use one of these hearts from Dollar Tree. If you have a jigsaw, you would just cut a line across the middle. You could also use one of those smaller hearts that they have at Dollar Tree this year, and they look like this. You could cut a line across the middle of it if you have a jigsaw. They also have those smaller hearts. You could use a number of things if you don't have scrap wood. Okay, I'm going to use Petticoat Pink. I'm going to water it down really good and just spray a bunch of water in there and mix it up because I want this to be very translucent. I'm going to paint the bottom of it with one good coat of that. And then the top, I'm going to use, I believe, weathered wood. Hopefully I add that on here, that we're going to use weathered wood on the top. And then I use a little bit of the weathered wood to dry brush on the bottom. Weathered wood is one of my favorite DIY paints. You can get DIY paints from Sammy at her website, unicorndustdesigns.com. And she has IOD products, she has Saltwash, she has all kinds of amazing thrift finds and upcycled thrift finds over there. So go check her website out. I'll have it linked in my description box. So I did this, and then I ended up using a little bit of that pink on the top too to give it a little bit of highlighting. So I really love how this turns out. Now we are going to need to seal our DIY paints, so we're going to use Big Top Sealer. It is a beautiful sealer. It is not a gloss, but it's not a matte. It's somewhere kind of in between. It is kind of a satin, but not a shiny satin, if that makes sense. I use it most of the time. Otherwise, I use the wax. So just give that a good coat. Now, I picked up this little hinge at the Habitat for Humanity Restore, and I let it soak in a mixture of vinegar, peroxide, and salt, trying to get it to rust, and it didn't rust up real good. So I just dabbed it up with some brown paint, and now I'm going to try my hand at rusting it with some cinnamon. I've seen lots of creators do this, so I'm going to dab some Mod Podge on here wherever I want it to look rusty, wherever I want the rust to sit, And I have to admit, I don't think mine turned out as good as I've seen some people's. Sorry, got my head in the way because I'm trying to see what I'm doing. But I did like how it turned out. So I'm going to sprinkle the cinnamon on top of the Mod Podge. I'm not sure if you're supposed to tap it into the Mod Podge, if you're supposed to let it dry longer than I did before I tapped it off, but it turned out okay. Now I'm going to sand off the edges a little bit on this because I thought it looked a little too something. I don't know. Why do we pick up the sand block and sand the edges? That's why I did it. Okay, I'm going to dust it off a little bit with the paintbrush. Just get all the little dusty stuff off. And now I'm going to vacuum up my space. I'm not sure why I'm showing you all the vacuuming today, but that little mini vac is also in my Amazon storefront, and it is an amazing little tool to have. It's USB charged, so no batteries. Okay, I have these little black tacks that I got. Pretty sure I got them at Walmart in the hardware section, and I'm just going to sand off the shiny, and then once I get them nailed in, I go back and put some of that weathered wood paint on top of them. But I'm just going to sand them off a little bit, and then I'm going to, yes, we're going to glue this down. No need to do our little dowel trick because this hinge is going to hold it together. So I'm going to nail these little nails in here. It's going to shake the table, going to shake the camera. I apologize for that. Oh, let me get my needle nose pliers because they're my extra fingers. And then we're going to put a nail in each one of those holes. Okay. And you can see that it took the black off, but it left them a little bit silver. And even though they're not real shiny, well, they kind of look shiny on camera. They weren't really that shiny. I think it's just the glare. I did take that weathered wood and dabbed it on there. And then I did put a little bit of cinnamon on while the paint was wet. And that actually worked out pretty good. And then I'm just going to put a little hanger on the back. I didn't show putting a hanger on the back of all of the projects that I did today because that gets a little redundant and a little bit boring to watch. But I'm going to show you on this one. And I think on this one I just did a whole strip of that little canvas drop cloth. Okay, this is so simple. The easiest one of the day, probably my favorite. You could totally make this one from one of those Dollar Tree hearts. If you have some type of stamp, you could use some kind of that romantic paper that has love letter writing on it. You could do a free graphic on the internet that you could print off and do this with. You could totally decoupage it on there. But this was so easy and so cute. So I'm just using my IOD, what's it called? Kindest Regards, and this black ink. And I'm just going to put it on there, press it in. I absolutely love this stamp. It's one of my very favorites that they have that I've purchased. And I'm just going to press it down very carefully, not to move it so it doesn't get blurred. Lift it up, super easy, and look. I love this. Okay, then I have this, showing you how I'm going to put the hanger on the back before I embellish the front. Was that a smart idea? It happens every once in a while. And then I picked this up at a thrift craft store. Yes, you heard me right. So you see that I'm using a little bit of that Fix-All adhesive, and I'm going to use some hot glue. But I want to tell you about this little thrift store that has craft supplies. It's it's new to me in my area. They just moved it to an area that's convenient for me. I got this for $1. This little pull. So I was trying to decide if I wanted to put a little twine bow on it. It was kind of cute, but I just love the simplicity without it. So let me know what you think about this one. I think it's my favorite. That's all for this video. I hope that you enjoyed it. Please don't forget to give it a thumbs up, drop a comment down below, and make sure that you're subscribed. Don't forget to remember to be still and know that He is God.